don't need the hard copy, but if you forgot to turn it into Google Classroom or you had trouble turning it into Google Classroom, this would be your last chance for full points. So that was number 32, the great big chart that had all of the information on one page for 4.6. So if that applies to you, please come turn that in. Otherwise, I need your phones and smartwatches on the board. And there's no calculator. Short quiz, but you're welcome to take half class. Front page asks for the 4 new graphs that I told you we would be asking for. Those are 2 points apiece. And hopefully you know a way to check those. And then the back is asking some of the characteristics we talked about, not all of them. Those are worth half a point each. But before you get going too far on here, you guys should put your name on the quiz. You should number the quiz as 33 through your binder. And please also note that on the back page, it is matching. So you don't have to try to cram the full answer in those little bitty blanks. You can just put the letter A through L, so you don't have to try to squeeze it in and copy it. I can grade it that way, but it's definitely easier on both of us if you just use the letters on the back page. And again, you're welcome to take up to the first half of class. I don't really think you'll need that, but
Thank you. think we still have a couple people working, which is perfectly fine.
But I am trying to get into the quizzes back, so as you get those, you should probably start looking those over, seeing which questions you missed, but you understand and don't need to ask about versus the ones that you will need to ask about. So let me finish getting the rest of these in. Let our one or two more people finish, and then we'll move on. Did not finish these because you didn't know, or because you didn't think you needed to? You needed to.
Hello. Hey. Hey, what's up? Sure. Hey, Seth. Do you have your cell phone?
I do.
You do have it? He says he has his phone.
I think
Okay.
I know
Oh.
what still.
Okay. He said there was only 3 people at your table, so he thinks he knows who it is. Sorry, he hung up too quick. think our quizzes are done, but I would like to grade the last couple of these and get them back to you today. So if you will hang tight just a couple more minutes for me. One thing that would be a good use of your time is I gave you that one-page test review last class, and if you don't have that finished, that's something you're going to need to do anyway. So you could do that for a few minutes while you wait for me to get these last couple quizzes in. Hello. Sure. Thank you. Elise, you're checked out.
Email that to you.
Yeah. Sorry for the delay there, but I do think there was some value and you get your 4.6 quiz back today. Of course, nothing on there was not anything in your notes, but after you had a chance to study, if you thought you were prepared to get them all right and you didn't, then it's good for you to see what that is before the test. So, like we did last class, this is kind of a hybrid where half of the class was set aside for that quiz and half of the time is to finish up the test review. So at some point this class period, I gave back your 4.5 quiz and your 4.6 quiz. And realistically, our next real class is going to be when our test is, but that'll be Friday. I suspect I won't see many of you guys on Wednesday. And even if I do, it'll be a shortened class period. It'll be like 20 or 30 minutes. So we're not going to try to do the test on Wednesday. It puts the test on Friday. But like our first test, the best resource is looking back at your past quizzes. Your 4.4, which we already looked at last class, and now your 4.5 and 4.6. Your second best resource would be your test review, just getting a little bit more practice in. The test review is the last thing that I will ask you to turn in from this unit. In fact, you can turn that in the Google Classroom now if you have it finished, but I need it before we start the test on Friday. And I guess before I start taking any questions you may have, I want to remind you guys about the late work policy. You can get late credit from anything in Unit 2, so anything after our first test, but it has to be fully completed and I have to get it before we take the test. So at some point, check Grade Viewer, you have a 0 for anything, you can go back and finish it, turn it back into Google Classroom, or turn it into Google Classroom for the first time, and you can get half your points back. If there was anything you got half credit on because it was incomplete, you can finish it, turn it back in, and you can get half the points that you'd missed. So, but the red line there is the start of the test. Once we do that, I will not accept it after that. So, if that applies to you, you need to add that to your to-do list. Okay, and I apologize, some of you have seen your 4.5 quiz longer than others, but yes. Okay, so 4.4, we already did questions on last class. I don't mind taking more questions from that, but that needs to be after everybody has a chance to ask the other questions. So 4.5 was on graphing sine and cosine with every transformation you could possibly think of. 4.6 was graphing the 4 other trig graphs, no transformations, but being able to state some of the characteristics. And unless I tell you guys differently, you should always assume that our tests are 100 points. So your first test was 100 points. Your second test that's on Friday will also be 100 points. So it'll impact your grade just as much as the first one did. And obviously the quizzes are important too. I think the 4.4 quiz was like 22 points or something. 4.5 was out of 25 points and the 4.6 was out of 23 points. You add all those up, it's not nothing, but compared to 100 points on a test, and the test goes in the major category of your grade, which is 60% of your grade, versus the quizzes that are going to minor category of your grade that are only 40% of your grade. So, certainly want to make sure that you remember how to do the stuff you got right initially, so you haven't forgotten it, and make sure that you can do the stuff that you may have missed on the quizzes initially. So, just focusing on section 4.5, is there any of these you would like us to discuss again and make sure that you're on the right track?
Seth, you got the test review done? Anything from your 4-5 quiz? By the way, I think there's a ACT coming up soon in there. If any of y'all end up taking it, I'd like to know if you see any sine and cosine graph stuff on there. It's not on there every time, but I think about half the time one of the questions is that. So, yeah, Marley. Number 4. Okay, and which form did you have? G. Okay, so her number 4 was the one where it was already graphed. I'm going to do my best to replicate what this looks like. Okay. So hers looks the same as this, and one of the other forms may have had the same graph. I don't remember. At least a very similar graph. So there's lots of possible answers with this, but some stuff, regardless, now whether you want to pick sine or cosine, both could be correct. But the things that are non-negotiable would be the amplitude. So if the max is 3 and min is -1, the distance between min and max would be 4, but amplitude is supposed to be half of that. So A could either be 2 or -2, depending on if you want to flip it over the x-axis, and that's completely optional. I'm just going to go with 2, and that's regardless if you pick sine or cosine. Also a non-negotiable is the period. It looks like to see one full cycle, I need the period to be pi, and since period comes from 2 pi over b, for that to equal pi, b needs to be 2, and b is the number that goes next to x. There's more of this graph above the x-axis than below. In fact, if I shifted this down 1, it would go to 2 and -2. That's how I know the whole thing got bumped up by 1. And then really the last thing you need to consider is whether you want to do sine or cosine, and depending on which one you pick, you may need a phase shift as well. And phase shift is the toughest part, in my opinion, of these question types, so I would try to avoid that. So to me, the natural cosine graph goes through the y-intercept of 1, and so the fact that this is still going through a y-intercept of 3 makes me think that I would probably lean on a cosine graph. But the way that you should be checking your work here, because you don't get a calculator on this, is you should try graphing your answer and see if it makes sense. I know cosine and I was trying to do that mentally, but it becomes a lot. Regular cosine graph looks like this in purple. Changing the amplitude to be 2. Makes it look like that. Moving it all up 1. 1. Okay, gets us to that gray graph. And then the other thing is the period change. So to squeeze this into from 2 pi is what my current period is for my graph in gray to 1 pi. I would need to scrunch this up and down, up. And that fits perfectly on there. So if you went with the cosine graph, you did not need to flip it over the x-axis at all, so you could leave it positive 2. It's not wrong if you did negative 2, but if you did, you also needed a phase shift, so then that gets kind of tricky. But again, amplitude has to be 2, the period has to be pi, and the vertical shift have to be 1. Whether you want to use sine or cosine, flip it over the x-axis, and or do a phase shift is up to you. But it looks like this matches up with that, so that's what I would do. Okay, does anybody have something more specific about number 4? And again, those are hard to check without a calculator. Obviously with the calculator you could try your answer, make adjustments like we did in class, but we make this a no calculator unit because your calculator just does too much of the stuff we want to see if you can do. So the best that you can do to check an answer like question 4 is to just graph your answer on there and make sure that it lands where that graph is. Okay, other questions from your 4-5 quiz? Okay, I don't think the 4-6 is as interesting, but if there's something in your 4-6 quiz that you missed and you don't understand why or how you could know that without memorizing it, anything like that I can help with, now would be the time to ask. So anything from your 4.6 quiz that you did today? Okay. So, as always, I highly suggest you guys update your alarm in your phone or your planner or whatever your system is to remind you to study. Even if you feel fairly well prepared, 5 or 10 minutes goes a long way. That will be first thing on Friday. Again, I've not seen the bell schedule for Wednesday yet, but I suspect it'll be a short class with a lot of people out for school business, so we will not try to do anything new on Wednesday. But I guess if you're here, you can have those 20-30 minutes to study. So we'll do the test next class, 100-point test. Most similar to the quizzes. You also need to do the test review. If there's any of this that you decide you do want to ask about while you guys are here, obviously you're more than welcome to. But I will need you to let me know. So you can call me over. Or bring it up here, whatever's easier for you. Also, like our first test, if having access to another copy of the quiz you took or the other form that you took would be beneficial to you, I will share those with you because, again, these just get trashed in a few weeks anyway. So if there's any of these that would benefit you, I still have Form E and F of 4.4. For 4.5, I have the Form E, F, and G. And you probably don't need 4.6, but 4.6 I do have Forms E and F. So if there's any of that that you are willing and wanting for extra practice, I will leave those on the practice here for you to help yourself. And
And I'm not willing to post my answer keys to the website. But if you do the part of the practice that you feel like you need and you'd like to check your answers, you're welcome to check with my answer key. It is, unless B's already been factored out. See how B's in front of the parentheses instead of in the parentheses?
So if B's outside the parentheses.
Then it's already been divided out.
Take this straight
Uh-huh.
out.
Yep. And if that bugs you, you can always just distribute this back. You can do this times this, and this times this, and then you can work it.
I guess I'll also be interested to hear what kind of trig is on the PSAT. If any of you guys are doing it. We got a few sophomores. Do we have any juniors taking the PSAT? Going for it? 4 or 5? Okay, you guys still have over 30 minutes of class. So as I said a minute ago, I'm still happy to help, but you have to tell me when and what that would possibly be. So bring it up here to me or call me over to your desk, either one.